Death does not knock politely. It howls across the void, shattering silence with desperation. On the edge of explored space, Captain Maya Chen heard that howl, and knew that if humanity didn't answer, there would be no one left to answer anything ever again. The Distress Beacon. Captain Maya Chen floated in zero gravity, her hands steady as she examined the strange metal sphere her crew had discovered. The exploration vessel Horizon's Edge had been mapping this dead system for 3 weeks when they found it. The sphere was perfectly smooth, about the size of a basketball, and it hummed with an energy their scanners couldn't identify. "Captain, you need to see these readings," called out Dr. James Park from his station. The young scientist's voice carried that mix of excitement and fear that Maya had learned to recognize after 15 years of deep space exploration. "This thing is older than anything we've ever found. I'm talking millions of years old, maybe more." Maya pushed off from the wall and glided over to Park's station. The data on his screen made her heart skip a beat. The sphere wasn't just old, it was impossibly old. Carbon dating suggested it existed before their sun had even formed. "That can't be right," she muttered, but she knew their equipment didn't lie. Lieutenant Sarah Cross, their communications officer, suddenly straightened in her chair. "Captain, the sphere is reacting to our scans. Energy output is increasing." The lights in the ship flickered, and Maya felt the hair on her arms stand up. Something was happening. The sphere began to glow, not with any light that seemed natural, but with colors that hurt to look at directly. Maya ordered everyone to step back, but it was too late. The sphere exploded with energy, not destructive, but expanding outward like a wave. It passed through their ship, through them, and continued outward into space at speeds that shouldn't be possible. "What just happened?" Maya demanded, but before anyone could answer, their long-range sensors started screaming alerts. Ships were appearing at the edge of the system, not human ships. These vessels were massive, angular things that looked like they were built from crystallized shadows. "Captain, we're being hailed," Cross reported, her face pale. On the main screen, a creature appeared that made Maya's crew gasp. It stood 3 meters tall, covered in chitinous armor that seemed to shift and move on its own. Its 6 eyes arranged in a circle around its head, all focused on them at once. "Humans," the creature spoke, its voice like grinding metal. "You have activated the calling stone. This is forbidden. You will surrender your vessel and submit to harvesting." The transmission ended before Maya could respond. "Harvesting?" Park whispered. "Captain, what do we do?" Maya's mind raced. They were a science vessel, not a warship. They had basic defensive weapons, but against those massive ships, they might as well throw rocks. But she wasn't about to let her crew become some alien science experiment. "Cross, send out a general distress signal. All frequencies, all languages. Tell them what's happening here." "Captain, those ships are moving to surround us," reported their pilot, Lieutenant Commander Wei Zhang. "They'll be in weapons range in 5 minutes. Maya made a decision that would change everything. "Park, can you figure out what that sphere did? What signal it sent?" The scientist's fingers flew over his console. "It's not just a signal, Captain. It's like a key. It's unlocking something, awakening something. The pattern is spreading through subspace faster than light." The alien ships, which Park identified as belonging to something called the Korath Dominion according to their database of intercepted communications, began firing warning shots. Bright beams of energy passed close enough to their ship to make the shields spark. "Humans, this is your final warning. Surrender or be destroyed." Maya grabbed the communication controls. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the Earthship Horizon's Edge. We are explorers, not warriors. We activated your calling stone by accident. We mean no harm." The response was immediate and violent. The lead Korath ship fired directly at them. The Horizon's Edge shook like a toy in a hurricane. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and Maya heard the horrible sound of their hull groaning under the stress. "Shields down to 30%, someone shouted. Another hit like that and they were done. But then something impossible happened. Space itself seemed to tear open behind the Korath fleet. Ships began emerging from wounds in reality, vessels that looked like they were built from nightmares and impossibilities. These weren't sleek or beautiful. They were functional, brutal things covered in weapons and armor. And on their hulls, Maya saw something that made her heart leap. Earth symbols, human writing, but changed, evolved, made harder by centuries in the dark between stars. The lead ship of this new fleet was massive, easily dwarfing the Korath vessels. It broadcast on an open channel, and the voice that came through was human, but different. Older, harder. "This is Commander Alexei Volkov of the Voidwalker fleet. We heard the calling. We have come." The Korath commander appeared on screen again, but now it looked afraid. "Impossible. You are myths, stories to frighten children. The Voidwalkers died centuries ago." Volkov's response was broadcast for everyone to hear. We didn't die. We evolved. We learned to live in the spaces between spaces, to walk in the void where physics fears to tread. And now, we've come home to find you threatening our cousins. The Voidwalker ships opened fire. Maya watched in awe as weapons she couldn't understand tore through the Korath shields like paper. Beams of twisted space, projectiles that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, fighters that moved in ways that hurt to watch. The Korath, who moments ago had seemed invincible, were being systematically destroyed. Captain Chen, Volkov's voice came through on a private channel. You need to know what you've awakened. The Calling Stone wasn't just a distress beacon, it was a warning system. The Korath aren't the real enemy. They're running from something. Something that's been sleeping in the deep dark, waiting for that signal. What are you talking about? Maya asked, but even as she spoke, her sensors started picking up new readings. From the galactic core, something was moving. Not ships, something else. Something that bent space around it like reality was optional. Oh my God, Park breathed. Captain, whatever's coming, it's big, planet-sized big, and it's moving faster than anything should be able to move. Volkov's ship moved to protect the horizon's edge. Captain Chen, you and your crew have started something that can't be stopped. The entropy seekers have awakened. They're coming to unmake everything that exists. The Korath were trying to prevent anyone from activating the Calling Stone because they knew what it would bring. The surviving Korath ships had stopped fighting. Their commander appeared on screen one more time. You fools, you've doomed us all. The entropy seekers consume reality itself. They are the end of everything. Then it did something Maya didn't expect. It sent them its entire database on the entropy seekers. If we're all going to die, at least know what killed you. Maya's crew scrambled to process the information. What they learned terrified them. The entropy seekers weren't just aliens. They were something from outside normal space and time. They existed to return the universe to a state of perfect uniformity, perfect entropy. No life, no complexity, no difference. Just endless, perfect sameness. How do we fight something like that? Cross asked, her voice small. Volkov answered. The same way humanity has always fought impossible odds. We refuse to accept defeat, we adapt, we survive, and we call for help. His ship began transmitting something, a signal that combined the Calling Stone's awakening frequency with something uniquely human, a cry of defiance against the dark. What are you doing? Maya asked. Calling everyone, every human ship, every colony, every outpost, and not just humans, every species that's ever fought against extinction, every race that's ever looked at impossible odds and said not today. The entropy seekers think they're facing scattered, weak civilizations. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten everything we've built. Responses started coming in. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Ships from across the galaxy, from species Maya had never heard of, all responding to the combined distress call and rallying cry. The Voidwalkers had added something to the signal, something that translated across all languages and all minds. It was simple, it was human, it was perfect. Come fight with us or die alone. The awakening commander Alexei Volkov stood on the bridge of the Erebus Ascendant, watching as more ships emerged from fold space. His fleet, the Voidwalkers, had spent 300 years in the deep black between galaxies. They were humanity's lost colony ships, the ones everyone thought had been destroyed in the early days of interstellar travel. But they hadn't been destroyed, they had been changed. Sir, the memory cores from the Korath ship have been fully analyzed, reported his second-in-command, Captain Yuki Tanaka. She had been born in the void, never knowing Earth except through stories. The entropy seekers aren't just destroyers, they're harvesters. They collect the organized energy of civilizations and use it to fuel their return to primordial chaos. Volkov nodded. He had suspected as much. In their centuries of isolation, the Voidwalkers had encountered things in the deep space between galaxies that most species couldn't imagine. They had learned that the universe was far stranger and more dangerous than anyone on Earth knew. How long until they reach inhabited space? At their current speed, 6 days, Tanaka replied. But sir, they're not just coming in a straight line, they're emerging from multiple points in space simultaneously. It's like they're stepping through dimensions we can't see. On the tactical display, Volkov watched as more allied ships arrived. The response to their call had been overwhelming. The Zentari Commonwealth with their living ships that looked like massive space whales. The Silicon Dreams, artificial intelligences that had achieved consciousness and built bodies of pure energy. The Gardeners, plant-based beings who grew their vessels from seeds the size of moons. But it was the human response that surprised him most. Earth's newest fleet, ships he didn't recognize with technology that had advanced far beyond what he remembered, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Leading them was Admiral Admiral Chen, Maya Chen's older sister, commanding the dreadnought Terra Invictus. Commander Volkov, Admiral Chen's voice came through the comm. I've been authorized by the United Earth government to coordinate our response, but we defer to your experience with extra-dimensional threats. Volkov almost smiled. Earth had changed, become more diplomatic, more willing to work with others. The Void Walkers had changed too, but in the opposite direction. They had become harder, more direct, more willing to do whatever it took to survive. Admiral, with respect, diplomacy won't work here. The entropy seekers don't negotiate. They don't even communicate in any way we understand. They simply unmake things. Then how do we fight them? Maya Chen asked. She had been given temporary command of a frigate squadron, her experience with the Calling Stone making her valuable despite her junior rank. We don't fight them in any conventional sense, Volkov explained, bringing up a holographic display that hurt to look at directly. This is what an entropy seeker looks like to our sensors. Notice how it doesn't have a fixed form? It exists in a state of constant flux, breaking down the laws of physics around it. Traditional weapons just get absorbed and converted to entropy. The assembled fleet commanders, both human and alien, studied the data with growing concern. The Korath commander, who had survived the initial battle and reluctantly joined the alliance, spoke up. My people have records of the last time they emerged, 50,000 years ago. They consumed 3 galaxies before going dormant again. The only reason they stopped was because they ran out of organized matter to consume. That's not entirely accurate, said a new voice. Everyone turned to see a figure materialize on the bridge. It wasn't teleportation, more like reality simply decided they had always been there. The being was impossible to describe, constantly shifting between states of matter and energy. I am what you would call an archive. I am one of the few survivors of the last emergence. Volkov's hand moved to his weapon, but the archive raised what might have been a hand. I am not your enemy. I have waited eons for someone to activate the Calling Stone again. It was not a trap, but a test. Only a species with the right combination of curiosity, courage, and stubbornness would activate it while under threat. Humanity has passed this test. A test for what? Admiral Chen demanded. To see if you were ready to inherit the weapons needed to fight the entropy seekers. My creators built them before they were consumed, but they needed the right species to wield them. A species that could think irrationally, act against pure logic, and refuse to accept the inevitable. Humans call it hope. We called it the beautiful madness. The archive gestured, and new data flooded their systems. Weapon designs that use the entropy seekers' own nature against them. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Shields that turn dissolution into strength. But knowing how to build them and being able to use them are different things. The weapons require operators who can hold contradictory thoughts simultaneously, who can believe in victory while accepting defeat, who can be both ordered and chaotic. You're describing human nature, Maya said quietly. We're walking contradictions. Precisely. And that is why you can win where others failed. The archive turned to address all the assembled fleets. The entropy seekers fear only one thing: complexity that refuses to simplify, order that embraces chaos, life that chooses death before surrender. They have never faced a coalition like this, led by a species as paradoxical as humanity. Over the next 4 days, the fleet worked tirelessly to implement the archive's weapons. The Void Walkers, with their centuries of experience with impossible physics, led the modifications. The alien allies contributed their own technologies, creating hybrid systems that no single species could have imagined. But it was the humans who surprised everyone. Engineers from Earth worked alongside Void Walker technicians who had never seen their homeworld. They argued, fought, laughed, and created together. They took the archive's designs and didn't just build them, they improved them. They added fail-safes that shouldn't work, redundancies that defied logic, and weapon systems that ran on pure human stubbornness. Captain Park, who had been promoted to Chief Science Officer of the combined fleet, made a discovery that changed everything. The Calling Stone didn't just send a signal, it marked us, all of us who were present when it activated. We're connected to it somehow, and through it, to each other. He demonstrated by thinking of a complex equation, and Maya, across the fleet, instantly understood it. It's creating a network, the archive confirmed. The stone recognizes potential defenders and links them. In the coming battle, you'll be able to coordinate in ways the entropy seekers won't expect. They're used to facing disconnected resistance. You'll be fighting as one mind with a billion independent thoughts. On the 5th day, as they made final preparations, Volkov gathered the human commanders. Tomorrow, we face something that wants to unmake existence itself. Our ancestors would think we're insane for even trying to fight it. But that's what makes us human. We don't just fight battles we can win. We fight battles that need fighting. Admiral Chen added. Every species here has their own reason for fighting. The Zentari protect their spawning grounds. The Silicon Dreams defend their server worlds. The gardeners safeguard their garden planets. But humans? We fight because someone needs to. Because if we don't, who will? That night, as the fleet prepared for battle, something unexpected happened. The various species began sharing their cultures. The Zentari sang songs that could only be heard through vibrations in space. The Silicon Dreams created light shows that told stories in pure mathematics. The gardeners grew flowers that bloomed in vacuum, releasing spores that sparkled like stars. And the humans? They did what humans always did. They adapted. They learned the Zentari songs and sang them badly but with enthusiasm. They added their own chaotic creativity to the Silicon Dreams' mathematical stories. They planted earth seeds alongside the gardener's cosmic flowers, creating hybrid gardens that shouldn't exist but did anyway. The entropy seekers were coming to face a coalition of species, but what they would actually face was something far more dangerous: a family, a dysfunctional, argumentative, chaotic family united by humanity's strange ability to bring others together through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The Coalition of the Desperate. The entropy seekers arrived exactly as the archive had predicted, tearing through the fabric of space itself like reality was merely a suggestion. They didn't emerge from hyperspace or fold space or any method of travel that followed physics. They simply existed where they hadn't before, massive structures of unmaking that hurt to perceive directly. Admiral Chen stood at the command center of the United Fleet, surrounded by representatives of every species that had answered the call. The tactical display showed the enemy forces, if they could even be called forces. The entropy seekers were more like areas where existence forgot how to exist, dark wounds in space that grew larger by consuming everything around them. All ships, implement protocol paradox, she commanded. This was the strategy they had developed, based on the archive's knowledge and human unconventional thinking. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, the fleet scattered into seemingly random patterns that actually followed a complex mathematical sequence Park had developed. A sequence that was both perfectly ordered and completely chaotic. The first engagement happened when the Zentari living ships released their combat spores, but these weren't ordinary weapons. They had been modified with human viruses, computer code from the Silicon Dreams, and genetic material from the gardeners. The spores hit the leading entropy seeker, and something impossible happened. Instead of being absorbed, they began to multiply, creating pockets of aggressive life within the creature of unmaking. "It's working!" Park shouted from his station on the horizon's edge. The combination of order and chaos is confusing them. They can't process something that's both organized and random simultaneously. But the entropy seekers adapted quickly. They began to pulse with waves of dissolution, breaking down the molecular bonds of anything nearby. 3 Korath ships simply ceased to exist. Their matter converted to pure entropy in seconds. The Coalition's first victory turned into a desperate struggle for survival. That's when the Void Walkers made their move. Volkov's fleet didn't attack directly. Instead, they did something that shouldn't have been possible. They flew their ships directly into the entropy seekers, but instead of being dissolved, they passed through, existing in a state of quantum uncertainty that the creatures couldn't process. "How are they doing that?" Maya asked, watching in amazement. The archive explained. The Voidwalkers spent centuries in the nothing between galaxies. They learned to exist in states between states. They're neither here nor there, neither real nor unreal. To the entropy seekers, they're an impossibility that can't be unmade because they're already partially unmade. Inside the entropy seekers, the Void Walker ships deployed their special weapons, bombs that created order instead of destroying it. Devices that forced the creatures to experience time linearly instead of all at once. Weapons that imposed the laws of physics on beings that existed outside them. The Silicon Dreams joined the assault, but their approach was different. They attacked the entropy seekers with pure information, flooding them with data that had no pattern, no meaning, just endless complexity that demanded processing. The digital beings sacrificed themselves by the thousands, each death creating more chaos in the enemy's attempt to create uniform entropy. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," Cross reported. "It's coming from inside the largest entropy seeker." On the screen appeared Volkov, his ship somehow broadcasting from within the creature itself. "Admiral Chen, we found their core. It's not what we expected. They're not destroyers, they're gardeners. They're trying to return the universe to a state where it can be reborn. They think existence has become too complex, too corrupted." "That's insane." someone said. No, the archive interjected. That's their version of sanity. They see complexity as a disease and themselves as the cure. But they're wrong. Complexity isn't corruption, it's evolution. Maya had an idea. A crazy, impossible, utterly human idea. What if we don't fight them? What if we show them they're wrong? Before anyone could stop her, she activated the calling stone they had brought aboard. But instead of sending a distress signal, she sent something else. Memories. Human memories. She sent the memory of the first time humans saw Earth from space and realized how small and precious it was. The memory of the first time a parent held their child. The memory of strangers helping each other during disasters. The memory of enemies becoming friends. The memory of choosing hope when logic said there was none. The effect was immediate. The entropy seekers paused, their dissolution waves faltering. They had never encountered this before. Pure emotion without logic, meaning without order, beauty in chaos. Other species saw what Maya was doing and joined in. The Zentari shared the memory of their first spawning, when millions of their young took to space for the first time. The Silicon Dreams shared the moment they achieved consciousness and realized they were alive. The gardeners shared the feeling of their first seed sprouting in alien soil. The coalition wasn't just fighting the entropy seekers, they were teaching them. It's working, Park announced, his voice filled with awe. The entropy seekers are changing. They're incorporating the memories into their structure. They're learning that complexity isn't corruption, it's beauty. But not all the entropy seekers were willing to learn. The largest one, what the archive called the Prime Unmover, rejected the memories and attacked with renewed fury. It created a wave of pure entropy that began unmaking space itself, creating a growing void where nothing could exist. All ships, fall back, Admiral Chen ordered, but Volkov's voice cut through the chaos. Negative, Admiral. We're in position. The Void Walkers have one last card to play. His ship, still inside the Prime Unmover, began to glow with impossible light. We're going to show it what humans do when faced with the impossible. We don't just fight it, we embrace it. The Voidwalker fleet did something that shouldn't have been possible. They linked their ships together while existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They created a paradox so profound that reality itself had to choose which version to believe. And in that moment of choice, they struck. Instead of trying to destroy the Prime Unmover, they absorbed it. They took its entropy into themselves and refused to dissolve. They held chaos and order in perfect balance through nothing but human willpower and stubborn refusal to cease existing. The Prime Unmover found itself facing the one thing it couldn't unmake, a paradox that chose to exist despite being impossible. Now, Volkov shouted, all ships, fire everything you have at these coordinates. The coalition fired as one, not at the Prime Unmover, but at the space around it. They created a cage of contradictions, a prison of paradoxes. Order and chaos, life and death, existence and void, all forced to exist in the same space. The Prime Unmover tried to escape, but everywhere it turned, it faced something that shouldn't exist, but did. Finally, it did the only thing it could do. It stopped. Not destroyed, not defeated, but paused in confusion. In that moment of stillness, Maya did something no one expected. She opened a communication channel to it. You think complexity is wrong, she said. You think the universe should be simple, uniform, perfect. But perfection isn't uniform. Perfection is diversity. It's the fact that from the same basic particles, the universe created stars and planets, life and consciousness, love and hope. You're not trying to perfect the universe. You're trying to kill what makes it beautiful. The Prime Unmover responded, not in words, but in feelings that flooded through the Calling Stone network. Confusion, fear, and underneath it all, loneliness. It had been alone for so long, the only one of its kind, trying to fix a universe it didn't understand. You don't have to be alone, Maya continued. You don't have to unmake everything. You can be part of it, part of the complexity, the chaos, the beauty. You can choose to create instead of destroy. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Prime Unmover began to change, not dissolving but transforming. It took the paradoxes surrounding it and incorporated them into itself. It became something new, neither creator nor destroyer, but a guardian of the balance between order and chaos. The other entropy seekers, seeing their leader transform, followed suit. One by one, they stopped trying to unmake reality and started trying to understand it. The coalition watched in amazement as their enemies became something else entirely. Not allies, not friends, but no longer threats. We did it, Admiral Chen said, barely believing it. We actually did it. No, Volkov corrected, his ship emerging from what had been the Prime Unmover. We did what humans always do. We took an impossible situation and made it possible through sheer stubbornness and refusal to accept defeat. We didn't defeat the entropy seekers. We taught them that existence is worth preserving in all its chaotic glory. The archive appeared one last time. This is why the Calling Stone chose humanity, not because you're the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because you're the only species crazy enough to look at beings trying to unmake existence and think, maybe they just need a friend. Your beautiful madness has saved the universe. In the aftermath of the battle, the coalition didn't dissolve. The bonds formed in facing extinction together were too strong. The Void Walkers decided to return to human space, bringing with them 3 centuries of knowledge gained in the deep black. The alien allies established embassies on Earth and invited humans to their worlds. The entropy seekers, now calling themselves the Balance Keepers, took on a new role. They would guard against threats to existence, but not by unmaking them. Instead, they would do what humanity had taught them. They would teach, adapt, and find the beauty in chaos. Maya stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, looking at the stars that they had saved. The Calling Stone sat in a place of honor, no longer needed but kept as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. Sometimes it's the stubborn human refusal to give up, to accept defeat, or to stop believing that even the darkest enemy might just need someone to show them a better way. "Captain," Park said, "we're receiving thousands of messages. Species from across the galaxy want to join the coalition. They're calling it the Alliance of Beautiful Madness." Maya smiled. "Tell them they're all welcome. The universe is big enough for everyone's chaos." As the fleet began to disperse, returning to their homes with stories of the impossible battle, one truth spread across the galaxy. When the universe called for help, humanity didn't just answer. They brought everyone together and showed them that the greatest strength wasn't in order or chaos alone, but in the beautiful, impossible balance between them. The stars continued to shine, complex and chaotic and beautiful, and somewhere among them, humanity continued to do what it did best, making the impossible possible through sheer determination and the absolute refusal to accept that anything was truly hopeless.